What's up, everybody? I hope y'all are having a wonderful day. I'm Anthony. On today's video, I got another book recommendation for y'all. Now, a lot of you who have watched this channel for a while know that I love baking bread. I've been doing it for a very long time, and a lot of people have commented, hey man, you know a lot of recipes and you're pretty good at it. How did you get to that point? What resources did you use to get to that level that you're at? And I'm gonna be completely honest here. I got it from this book, Bread Baking for Beginners by Ohara. Now, a little background for me. When I grew up, I did not grow up making bread, okay? The most homemade bread I was able to get close to was when my grandma would make banana nut bread in a bread machine. I didn't actually start making my own bread until I was in my 20s, all right? As a child, the only time I would actually get my hands into flour was when I was making pasta or pierogies. That's it. When it comes down to making bread, this was a relatively new thing for me as I'm 35 now, and I've only really been doing this for the last decade. Now, how I got into bread making is basically atypical, all right? I started out with a bread maker, and then I weaned myself off into doing actual country loaves. Usually, that's what I hear a lot of people start with. They start with a bread maker, they realize that it's only good for so much, so then they move on to something else, and the first loaf that most people work on is a country-style loaf, all right? Like a boule. Basically, it's a big round ball of dough, and you cook it like a country-style loaf, like in a Dutch oven or something. So basically, that's what I was doing, and I like that idea because with a boule, it's very forgiving. If you want to use milk, if you want to use sugar, then you can absolutely do so to kind of cover up maybe some underproofing or overproofing mistakes that you might have with your yeast. It's very forgiving. But when you want to start, trying to advance into making things like sandwich bread or brioche, that's when you really got to start paying attention to exactly what you're actually doing. Because unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand, but bread making is chemistry, straight up chemistry. And if you don't have your formula right, the end product isn't going to be near as good as it could be if you actually paid attention to the right steps. Now, that is where this book comes into play. I was making a lot of really good progress in terms of my boules or my country style loaves, but I wasn't being able to get a really good quality product repeatedly. If I was making something like a brioche or sandwich bread, I might get it 1 out of 10 times. Didn't really get to the point I wanted, and I couldn't figure out why. So when I picked up this book, I finally figured out my mistake. And what mistake am I talking about? Well, basically using volume over weight. Now, let me explain. When I was getting into bread making, when I was doing my, whole country loaves and whatever else, you always do it by cups, all right? Hey, a cup of flour or 3 cups of flour, all-purpose flour, whatever. But you have to understand, when you're doing chemistry, you can't go by volume, you have to go by weight. And when you use things like cups, volume, you're going to get inaccurate or wildly inconsistent results. That's what this book taught me. It basically said, yo, you need to throw out your old style of thinking and you need to bring into the fact that weight is how you're going to get your consistency, okay? So when you use grams instead of cups, all those little wild variables are gone, and you can focus on something as simple as making a sandwich loaf and actually get the right product the first time. Now, the idea of this video is not to knock people that happen to still be making bread via cups. I'm just giving you a heads up. If you want to move your level from here, maybe up here, you got to start using weight, because by using volume, you're really handicapping yourself. Now, this book is broken up into 4 different subsections, all right? You have no kneaded breads, kneaded breads, enriched breads, and pre-fermented breads, okay? So you are basically going from your beginning level all the way up to a more intermediate advance. So when you're starting out bread making, a lot of people get scared or nervous at the idea of kneading bread because they don't know how to do it. So there's quite a few recipes in here, quite a few examples on how you can make really good loaves just by proofing longer, because if you're not going to knead, you're going to need to proof longer to get the gluten to work the way you want it. Then you move on to your kneaded breads, something that I kind of just jumped into because I like to knead bread. Personally, for me, kneading is just one of those things I really enjoy doing. And then you move into enriched breads, where you're basically putting things in your bread like cinnamon rolls or babka. And then finally, you are ending with a pre-ferment, where you're using sourdough, biga, and poolish. Now, just like with all my recommendations or reviews, I wanted to go ahead and explain to y'all that there are always going to be things I really like about the product or book, and things I don't like about the product or book. And this one is no different. There is no exception. There are a lot of things I really like, and a lot of things I don't really like. And I wanted to make sure I'm transparent here and tell you before you go out and buy it. So let's get into the things that I really like about this book. Number one, I've already talked about it, but using grams over cups made all of my results way more consistent. So that is the number one thing that I love about this book. Everything is in grams. Number two thing I like about it is the fact that all of the recipes in here are very basic and simple, all right? You don't need a whole bunch of ingredients. You're making bread the way it is supposed to be made with your basic 4 ingredients. Look at this. This is a simple Boulé country loaf I was talking about. And you look down here and all it's calling for is yeast, water, flour, and salt. That's all that's in bread, folks. I know people say, oh, you need milk, or you need sugar, or you need this spice, or blah, 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 blah. No, you only need 4 things. That's real bread. The third thing I like about this book is the fact that when you actually read it and you do a lot of the recipes, you understand, if you have experience baking bread, that the writer has her own style, all right? And there's people that like to do things a certain way, and they do it over and over again because it gives them good results. And that's one thing I've noticed throughout this book is through all the recipes, they all have the same process. And I like that, you know, that's her own style. You know, she found that it works for her, and by incorporating the same process every single time you make a bread, whether it's no knead up to a pre-ferment, you're still getting quality results. And I like that. I like the fact that she has her own, you know, system that works really well for her, and she keeps doing it. So a lot of times it may seem redundant when you're going through a lot of these recipes, but having your own style and having your own process totally works out, and it's incorporated, you know, helped me to incorporate my own style, my own process, so I do things right, you know, every single time, because I'm doing the same things every single time. So that's what I like about it, and the fact that she also does, you know, her own little design to the lame is just a bonus. The final thing that I really like about this book is the fact that the recipes in here are things that I like, things that I already enjoy. I'm already a humongous fan of cinnamon rolls, and it gives you a good recipe for brioche cinnamon rolls. I like cinnamon raisin swirl bread, it gives you that too. And I love chocolate babka. It gives you a recipe for that too. I've done it. It's freaking awesome. So the fact that this thing incorporates so many recipes that I very much enjoy is awesome, and that's why I love it. Now, one thing I wanted to hit on here that a lot of people won't talk about, but for me, I really think I have to if I'm going to be doing a recommendation, is some of the things I don't like about the book. Every recommendation I'll ever give somebody is not perfect. And I'm just going to go ahead and say that. There's always something that can be improved or something I don't personally like. And there's a few issues with the book that I have that don't take away from the fact that it's an excellent book. But there's a few things that I do differently, and I wanted to go ahead and put that on here. And the number one thing I do differently than what the book says is I don't flour my work surface, all right? All of her recipes require the kneading aspect to involve flouring the work surface. I don't personally do that because I found that when you do that, you're altering the hydration ratio of the bread. Now, for those of you who don't know, when you're making bread, you are doing, like I said, chemistry, all right? You're having actual amounts and amount of, you know, flour and water. And the ratio of that is called the hydration ratio. So if you get a higher hydration ratio, you're probably going to get bigger bubbles in the overall final bread, all right? That's why things like focaccia, ciabatta all have very big open crumbs, because they are very wet dough. So if you are going to be flouring your work surface as you're kneading, you're basically lowering your overall hydration rate. Now, she knows this because she gives a little bit more water to her recipes than they actually require. So if you take that out, if you take the flouring work surface out, you don't have to add as much water as she adds in a lot of her recipes. So that's one thing I've noticed. Now, a lot of people, maybe new people, beginners, might not understand that aspect, so that's why she does that. That's why she flours her surface, to kind of make the dough easier to work with, but it's just something I don't personally do, and I don't want to take away from the book, but that's just something I don't like. Another knock against this book is the fact that most of her recipes, actually I think all of her recipes, require the use of all-purpose flour. For me personally, I don't like using all-purpose flour except for a few things like quick breads, mainly because I like the results you get from, you know, bread flour better. Bread flour has more protein, has more gluten. So to me, you get a better taste, a better structure. That's why I like using it. But I understand why she uses AP in this book, because again, it's bread baking for beginners. And when you're using all-purpose flour, AP flour, it's much easier to work with. So I think that's why she does it. But I guess maybe that's just because maybe I've grown a little bit too advanced for the book. But personally, for me, I like bread flour over AP. That's why I'm throwing it on here. Now, another detraction I have with this book is, it's not a big one, but it's just something that I noticed, is the fact that a lot of the recipes require a Dutch oven, all right? Now, I get it. I completely understand. Maybe it's because, again, I've outgrown the book, but the reason behind using a Dutch oven when you're baking your bread is to lock in the moisture that bread gives off as it's cooking. As you're locking it in, then you're going to get a softer crust. Because if you just cook something on a stone, you're going to get a very hard crust. A lot of people don't like that. So by using a Dutch oven and cooking it for, the first half the time with the lid on, it locks in that moisture, making a softer crust. Then you take the lid off and you could finish the crust out. And it makes a really good bread. It makes a very good tasting bread, but it basically handicaps you because now if you want to make bread anywhere else, you have to use a Dutch oven. And that's just not good if you don't have one. So I would like to see more recipes with the option or alternate cooking directions on how you can get the same product without using one. Those aren't included, so that's why I wanted to mention that here as kind of a detraction, because not everybody has a Dutch oven, not everybody has the money for a Dutch oven. The final thing that I don't like, or the final detraction, is the fact that her beginner and intermediate sourdough recipes need to be swapped. I found it to be much easier if you do her intermediate first than her beginners first, because if you got a beginner who tries to take like a big dough ball of sourdough, which is going to be a high hydration rate, it's going to stick to absolutely everything. And it might be kind of intimidating when you try to knead a dough on a table and it's just sticking to your hands and not anything else. So you're probably going to give up, put a whole bunch of flour down, and you're going to alter that hydration ratio like I was talking about, and your sourdough will definitely suffer because of it. So I don't like cooking my sourdough that way. I like doing her intermediate way much better, where you just incorporate so many folds while still inside the bowl. So I think that intermediate is much easier. That's why I even still do it to this day. So that's just something I had to put in here for a detraction. If you start making your own sourdough, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's just one thing I had to mention here. Okay, so there you have it. That is my review of the book. I definitely suggest you pick this up. Like I said, I am recommending this book. I'm not recommending it, all right? There's the things that I didn't like about it. I think it's because I might be a little bit too advanced. Maybe I've been doing this so long, I'm able to do my own thing and kind of outgrow the training wheels that may have been presented in this book. Maybe that's why I did come up with a few detractions. But in all reality, when I was starting out, I thought myself at maybe this level. But in reality, I was down here. And I think that happens to a lot of people when they're doing some sort of hobby. They maybe are a little bit more cocky than they need to be, I think that's what they call the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you think you're much better at something than you really are. So in reality, while I thought I was here, I was maybe down here. But by getting this book, I was able to go from here back up to where I should be in terms of my bread baking. And even now, maybe I'm a little bit above that because I've been able to make all these different kinds of breads consistently. So that's one thing I really do want to credit with this book. It helped move me to that next level. And hopefully, if you want to make your own breads at home, you look into a resource like this as well, because yeah, it may be nice to be able to just Google something or DuckDuckGo and be like, hey, how do I make this? And the stuff pops up. But for me personally, I like having resources on print so I can just pick them up out of the bookshelf and bring them to the kitchen myself instead of having to keep turning my phone on. So that's just something I wanted to go ahead and mention. If you want to pick this up, then you will absolutely be able to do so down in the description below. I'll put a link, probably going to be an Amazon link. So if it is, you just know that by clicking on it, you're going to give me maybe a cent or two, and I would very much appreciate that. But I'm going to go ahead and end the video there. If you like this recommendation at all, please do me a humongous favor and give me a thumbs up. It would very much help out my channel, and I would absolutely appreciate it. Subscribe, and I'll catch y'all later, okay?